Chosen one, God is speaking right now, and the message is this: something is about to change everything. Not a small shift, everything. The direction, what's possible, what's available to you. Don't scroll past, because this isn't random. You can feel it, can't you? That stir that isn't anxiety, it's anticipation, the sense that a page is turning. Stay here, because this can be the moment you finally understand what changes, and why now is the time. Type Amen in the comments if you believe God is about to change everything for you, and you are ready to receive it. Before going further, understand this: the chosen one didn't land here by accident. In nature, there's something called the melting point. Every material has a single temperature, where it stops being what it was and becomes something new, and 1 degree before that, it still looks unchanged. Maybe the chosen one has been living through a long season of heat, pressure, and formation, wondering why nothing visible was shifting. That wasn't stagnation, it was being heated. And maybe right now is the final degree before everything finally changes state. Drop a like right now. This simple action helps carry this message to another chosen one who needs to hear it today. Real change is rarely blocked by external circumstances, and this is one of the most overlooked truths a chosen one can grasp in their entire spiritual journey. What actually blocks change is something internal that hasn't yet reached its melting point, a belief still being transformed, a pattern still being broken, an area of control still being surrendered. While that internal work is incomplete, no amount of external pushing will produce the breakthrough being chased. The outside world tends to mirror exactly what's still unprocessed on the inside, no matter how many doors get knocked on or strategies get tried. Picture a fruit tree that's being asked to produce ripe fruit in early spring. The tree isn't failing. The tree is still doing the invisible work of pulling nutrients deep underground. Pressuring the branches won't help. The fruit only comes when the root has finished its quiet, hidden assignment. That's exactly what's been happening in the life of the chosen one for longer than they realized. Many chosen ones spend long stretches of life desperately wanting external circumstances to change, while quietly resisting the internal shifts that needed to come first. And there's no shame in that, because it's almost universal. It's like wanting fruit to ripen without letting the root deepen, like demanding the harvest while refusing the planting season. There's a hard-won lesson here. The external always follows the internal, never the other way around. The chosen one who finally yields internally on what they've been resisting tends to watch external doors open in ways that no amount of striving was able to force. A practical example worth remembering: many people pray for years for a relationship to improve, a financial breakthrough to arrive, or a calling to materialize, while still holding on to the internal posture, identity, or wound that was actually keeping the door shut. The moment that internal grip loosens, the external situation often shifts faster than anyone expected. What was actually blocking the change until now wasn't a lack of effort, a lack of faith, or a lack of merit. And this matters enormously, because most chosen ones beat themselves up assuming the delay was their fault. The real reason was that an internal process needed more time, more pressure, and more formation than any human being would have voluntarily chosen if they had been holding the timing themselves. Honestly, if the chosen one had been in charge of their own timeline, they would have ended the heating phase long before the melting point was reached, and they would have ended up with a half-formed version of what was actually being prepared. There's something almost merciful about being denied control of the timing, even though it never feels merciful while it's happening. The delay wasn't punishment. The delay was protection. And protection eventually reveals itself as preparation in disguise once the chosen one looks back from the other side of the change. So the question worth sitting with is honest and direct. What internal work has actually been happening over this long season, even when nothing visible seemed to be moving? Which belief was being quietly dismantled? Which pattern was being slowly broken? Which area of life was being shaped beneath the surface? Because that internal process is most likely arriving at its conclusion right now, and it's exactly the conclusion of that hidden work that's about to release the external change being awaited. A practical step worth taking today: write down 3 internal shifts that have happened over the past year, even small ones. Maybe a fear that no longer controls decisions. Maybe a relationship dynamic finally seen with clarity. Maybe a version of self that quietly died without ceremony. Those shifts aren't random, they're the proof that the melting point is close. And what looked like a long dry waiting season was actually the chosen one being prepared for what couldn't have arrived a single day sooner. Type 777 If you believe the internal work you have been doing is about to produce external results that will change everything. When God moves in the life of a chosen one, he rarely moves only one thing. And this is one of the most underestimated truths about how divine change actually operates. He tends to move entire systems at once, because every area of a chosen one's life is connected to the others through invisible threads that can't be fully mapped from a human perspective. When he touches one specific point, the movement starts propagating through the entire structure, like ripples spreading across still water. What looks at first like a small change in one area is very often the opening of a transformation that will eventually touch every other area connected to it. A chosen one who notices something shifting even slightly in one corner of their life would be wise not to dismiss it as isolated. That single ripple is rarely just one ripple. It's the first visible sign of a much larger movement that has already begun beneath the surface, even if the rest hasn't surfaced yet. The most significant shifts in the life of a chosen one almost never start where they were expected to start, and that detail alone is worth slowing down to absorb. They tend to begin in an area that looked secondary, a small decision that felt almost unremarkable, a posture shift inside a specific context that no one applauded at the time. From that small starting point, the movement spreads outward into relationships, opportunities, self-perception, and even the inner sense of what is possible going forward. What looked local quietly reveals itself as systemic. What looked tiny reveals itself as the opening chapter of something far larger. A practical example worth carrying: a chosen one decides to set one new boundary in one specific relationship, and within months, that single decision rewrites their career, their friendships, and the way they speak to themselves in private. The decision wasn't small, the decision was the entry point. What's changing right now in the life of the chosen one may not actually be starting where their attention is currently focused, and this is exactly why so many people miss the early signs of their own breakthroughs. The change might be starting in a place that feels minor, an area considered unimportant, a decision that didn't even seem worth mentioning out loud. From that quiet beginning, it's already spreading toward everything connected to it, even though the chosen one might not be aware of the connections yet. This is why awareness matters in this season more than usual. Picture someone watching only the front door of their house, expecting change to arrive that way. Meanwhile, the change is already entering through a side window, a back hallway, or a route they never thought to monitor. The chosen one who learns to scan the whole house, instead of staring at the front door, tends to recognize what's happening earlier than everyone around them. So a practical step worth taking right now is this: pay close attention to what's already moving in the margins of life, not just the center where focus usually goes. Watch the small conversations that feel different. Notice the unexpected ideas that won't leave the mind. Track the new relationships forming around the edges. Observe the subtle changes in how certain situations are being internally received compared to a year ago. Because more often than not, those margins are where the larger changes start before becoming visible at the center. A practical exercise: write down 3 small shifts that have happened in the past 60 days that didn't seem important at the time. Then ask honestly, could any of these be the actual starting point of something much bigger that's still unfolding? That question alone has helped many chosen ones realize their breakthrough had already begun, quietly and humbly, in places they hadn't even thought to look. Divine timing isn't arbitrary, and this is something every chosen one needs to internalize deeply before another moment of life passes. It responds to a set of conditions that need to be present simultaneously. Conditions inside the chosen one, conditions in the surrounding environment, conditions in the lives of other people who are part of what's being prepared. And when all those conditions finally converge, what once looked impossible suddenly becomes inevitable. Picture a series of locks on a vault, each one needing to click open at the same time for the door to release. For years it might have looked like nothing was happening, but quietly, one by one, the locks were being aligned. Now is the moment, because all those clicks are finally landing in unison. The chosen one doesn't see every lock from where they stand, but the convergence is real, and it's already underway. Many chosen ones spend years asking why certain breakthroughs didn't arrive earlier, and that question deserves an honest answer. Looking back at the timing of every major shift in life, it almost always responds to convergences that no one had complete access to see. Something inside the chosen one needed to be ready. Something in the external circumstances needed to be aligned. something in the lives of other people involved needed to have happened first. A practical example worth carrying. Imagine someone who longed for a meaningful partnership for years and felt forgotten, only to later discover that the right person was walking through their own preparation in a completely separate part of the world, on a timeline that had to match. The arrival wasn't late. The arrival was synchronized, and synchronization always looks like delay until the moment of convergence finally hits. Now is the moment, because the conditions that needed to be present are converging, not necessarily all the conditions a chosen one would have listed if they had been the one writing the checklist. The conditions God identified as essential for what's being prepared to manifest in a sustainable way. And there's a critical distinction here that many people miss. God isn't building something that arrives quickly and collapses quickly. He's building something that arrives at the right time and lasts. That's why the timing has felt slow. Quick arrivals tend to produce fragile foundations, and the chosen one was never being prepared for fragility. They were being prepared for permanence. The wait wasn't God being absent or distant. The wait was God refusing to deliver something so prematurely that it wouldn't be able to hold the weight of what would come after it. The chosen one doesn't see every condition that's currently converging, and that's exactly the point. But the simple fact of being here right now, hearing this message, in this specific moment of life, is itself part of the convergence. None of this is accidental. Everything is aligning, including the seemingly small detail of these exact words landing on these exact ears at this exact time. A practical step worth taking today. Pause and write down 3 signs over the past few months that suggest something is shifting. A conversation that came out of nowhere, an opportunity that surfaced unexpectedly, a thought that won't leave the mind, a connection that suddenly feels different. Those aren't coincidences stacking up randomly. Those are locks clicking into place. And the timing that once seemed like it would never arrive is arriving now, exactly as it was always meant to. If you can feel that the timing is right, even if you cannot fully explain why, type "the time is now" down below. There's a difference between a change of circumstance and a change of state. And this distinction is one of the most important truths a chosen one can grasp before stepping into what's coming. A change of circumstance modifies what surrounds a person, but leaves them fundamentally the same on the inside. A change of state modifies who they are, and as a consequence, everything around them starts reflecting that new reality almost automatically. What's arriving in the life of the chosen one right now isn't just a change of circumstance, it's a change of state. That distinction alone can rewrite the entire way this season is interpreted. Picture a piece of metal that gets heated until it transforms into something new. Once it cools, it doesn't just look different, it is different. It now responds to the world differently, holds weight differently, behaves differently. That's exactly what's about to happen to the chosen one. After the biggest turning points in the lives of most chosen ones, what tends to surprise them the most isn't what changed externally, though plenty of external things shift. What surprises them is what changed internally and permanently, the way they see themselves, what they consider possible from that point forward, what they're willing to accept, and what they suddenly recognize they have every right to refuse. Those internal changes are what actually sustain whatever shifts on the outside, because external arrivals collapse very quickly when the person receiving them hasn't been internally upgraded to hold them. A practical example. Imagine someone who suddenly receives the financial blessing they prayed for, but inside they're still carrying the same scarcity wiring as before. The money tends to evaporate within a few cycles. The chosen one is being upgraded internally first, precisely so that whatever arrives externally has a stable container that can actually hold it. After this change, the chosen one isn't just going to have different things. The chosen one is going to be different, and that distinction is the entire reason this preparation has taken as long as it has. Being different is what guarantees that whatever arrives has solid ground to land on and stay on, instead of slipping through the cracks of an unprepared identity. This is why so many people receive breakthroughs and lose them within months, while others receive them and watch them multiply for decades. The difference isn't the size of the breakthrough. The difference is the size of the person receiving it. A practical illustration. The same amount of water poured into a cracked vessel and into a sealed vessel produces completely different outcomes. The chosen one has been the vessel under repair this whole time, even when it didn't feel like it, and the sealing is finally complete. So this is the question worth meditating on with full honesty. What version of self is going to emerge through this change, and how will that version be different from who has been showing up until now? Which belief is going to have been transformed permanently? Which limitation is going to have been crossed and never returned to? Which way of speaking, walking, deciding, or loving is going to have been fundamentally rewritten? Because that emerging version is exactly the version that will receive, sustain, and multiply what's arriving. A practical step worth doing today: write a short letter to the future version of self that exists on the other side of this change. Describe how that version moves through the world, what they no longer tolerate, what they now allow with ease. Most chosen ones discover while writing that this future version is already starting to peek through. The transformation isn't far away, it's already underway. Not every chosen one who reaches the melting point actually crosses through the change of state. And this is a hard truth that needs to be said with love, but without softening, because too much depends on hearing it clearly. Some arrive at the very edge of their breakthrough, and then quietly pull back. Not because of a lack of declared faith, not because of a lack of desire, but because of an attachment to the familiar that ends up being stronger than the pull toward the new. Real change, no matter how desperately it's been wanted, always demands leaving something behind. And what needs to be left behind isn't always the obvious thing. Sometimes it's not a bad habit or a toxic relationship. Sometimes it's a comfortable identity, a familiar self-image, a way of being that has been carried for so long that it feels like home, even though it stopped fitting a long time ago. Many chosen ones have stood on the edge of significant changes and pulled back without ever consciously deciding to, and that's the most dangerous form of retreat, because it hides itself behind perfectly reasonable explanations. The retreat looks like waiting for more clarity. It looks like postponing until the timing feels right. It looks like overthinking, overpraying, overanalyzing, while the actual moment quietly slips by. And here's the painful lesson learned by so many chosen ones across every generation. Every time a person retreats at a point of change, the cost isn't just losing what was about to arrive. The cost is having to walk the entire long path that led to that point all over again before another opportunity to cross presents itself. A practical example: someone hesitates to say yes to a clear opportunity because the conditions don't feel perfect, and then spends another 5 years preparing to face essentially the same opportunity in a different form. What can make a chosen one miss this change isn't a lack of faith in God. It's the attachment to versions of self, to situations, to relationships, or to identities that need to be released, so what's arriving has actual space to enter. And this is where it gets uncomfortable, because letting go often hurts more than admitting it should. A chosen one might be holding on to an old story they tell about themselves, an old role they play within a family, an old grievance that has become part of their personality, an old comfort that no longer serves but still feels safe. None of those things are evil. None of them are sinful. They simply belong to a previous chapter, and trying to drag them across the threshold into the next chapter is exactly what blocks the next chapter from beginning. Picture trying to move into a new house while still keeping every box from the old one packed in the hallway. There's nowhere for the new furniture to go. So the question worth confronting honestly, with no softening or polite avoidance, is this: what is the chosen one currently holding on to that needs to be released for this change to actually happen? Because chances are the answer is already known. It's been quietly tugging at the edges of awareness for a while now. The real question isn't whether the release will happen. It's whether it happens now, while the door is open, or after another long stretch of unnecessary resistance. A practical step worth taking right now. Name one thing, just one, that needs to be released for the next chapter to begin. It might be a grudge, a self-image, a relationship dynamic, a habitual fear, a quiet expectation. Write it down, speak it out loud, hand it over honestly, because the chosen one wasn't built to keep guarding boxes from a chapter that already ended. The chosen one was built to walk into the room where everything has been prepared and finally claim it. Type "I let go" in the comments if you are ready to release what needs to be released, so that everything God has for you can finally have space to enter. Receiving a major change without the right inner posture is like opening a window during a violent storm. What comes through ends up causing more damage than benefit. And this is one of the most overlooked truths about breakthroughs in the life of a chosen one. The breakthrough itself is rarely the whole assignment. The way it gets received is just as critical as the fact that it arrives. The posture that receives change in a sustainable way is built from three specific qualities working together: active gratitude, real humility about the source, and a clear sense of responsibility about what will be done with what arrives. Without those three working in harmony, even the most miraculous breakthrough tends to slip through the fingers of the person it was sent to bless. The chosen one who learns to receive well never has to wonder why their breakthroughs vanish. They've already prepared the soil to hold the seed. The changes that actually stayed in the lives of mature chosen ones across every generation were the ones received with intention, honored with action, and cultivated with consistency long after the initial euphoria wore off. And that consistency is exactly where most people quietly fail. The changes received passively, as if they were simply what was finally deserved arriving on schedule, almost never lasted. There's a sobering principle hidden here. Receiving well is a skill that has to be developed, just like every other meaningful skill in life. Picture an athlete who finally wins the championship they trained for. The celebration is fully earned, of course, but the athletes who keep winning year after year are the ones who treat the trophy as the start of more discipline, not the end of it. The chosen one who receives this change is being invited into the same posture. This is the beginning of new responsibility, not the end of effort. Sustaining what's changing is going to require a level of consistency that doesn't depend on how the chosen one feels on any given day, and that detail matters enormously because feelings will fluctuate even after the most miraculous breakthrough lands. After the initial euphoria of arrival passes, what carries the change forward is the repeated daily decision to honor what came, even on ordinary days, even when the novelty has worn off, even when the required effort no longer feels exciting. There's an honest truth here that most people don't want to hear. Maintenance is less glamorous than arrival, but maintenance is what determines whether the arrival becomes permanent or temporary. A practical example: someone receives a long prayed-for relationship, career, or platform, and within a year it dissolves. Not because the gift was fake, but because the daily, unglamorous work of honoring that gift was abandoned the moment things felt comfortable. So the questions worth sitting with honestly today are these: how will the chosen one actually honor what's arriving? Which habits will be developed on purpose? Which decisions will be made with intention? Which postures will be maintained even on the hardest days? Because change that isn't sustained quietly returns to the previous state, and what's coming is far too valuable to be wasted by a lack of intention. A practical step worth taking right now: write down 3 specific concrete habits that will be put into place as soon as this change arrives. Not vague spiritual intentions, but real, daily, repeatable practices. Maybe a morning rhythm of gratitude. Maybe a weekly review of how the new chapter is being honored. Maybe a clear boundary that protects the new identity from the patterns of the old one. Because the chosen one who plans the receiving as carefully as they prayed for the arrival is the one who watches the change become permanent, and from permanence, multiplication finally begins. Before Joshua crossed the Jordan, he received an instruction that sounded simple but actually demanded everything inside of him. Put your feet in the water. Don't wait for the river to part first. Don't calculate whether it's safe. Don't ask for one more sign before moving. Just put your feet in the water. And it was in the very act of those feet touching the water that the river finally opened. That single image carries the entire weight of what every chosen one needs to understand about the moment they're standing in right now. The river never opened before the step. The river opened because of the step. And anyone who stood on the bank waiting for the parting to happen first would have stood there forever, watching the water flow exactly as it had always flowed, while the assignment on the other side quietly waited for someone willing to move first. The greatest lesson learned about divine change across every generation of chosen ones is this: real change frequently requires a step before the evidence, and that order is non-negotiable, no matter how much human logic protests against it. The confirmation tends to arrive after the movement, not before. And the painful truth is that waiting for confirmation before moving is exactly what blocks the confirmation from being able to arrive in the first place. The river opens when the feet enter the water, not when feet stay frozen on the bank pleading for a guarantee. Picture someone standing at the edge of a pool, asking the water to prove it's wet before they're willing to step in. That scene sounds absurd, but it's exactly what countless chosen ones do at the edge of their own breakthroughs. The proof was always reserved for those willing to move without it. And the chosen one is being invited into that exact category right now. God is asking the chosen one now to put their feet in the water. And this isn't a vague spiritual metaphor. It's a concrete instruction with a concrete application in real life. To take the specific step that's currently in front of them without waiting for every condition to look perfect first. To trust that the river will part, not despite the obedience, but precisely because of it. There's something humbling and freeing about this principle. The chosen one doesn't need to figure out the entire crossing. They only need to take the first step. The waters that need to part will part as the step is being taken, not before. A practical example worth carrying close: every meaningful turning point in the lives of countless chosen ones across history happened only after they did one specific, identifiable thing without certainty. The certainty arrived later. The miracle never arrived to the hesitant, only to the obedient. So the question worth holding with full honesty is this: what is the specific step currently sitting right in front of the chosen one? Not the entire master plan, not the 10-year vision, not the perfect strategy, just the next step, the one that's already been quietly shown. Because that single step, taken in faith without waiting for ideal conditions, is going to be the exact moment when everything finally starts to change. A practical step worth taking today. Name out loud what the next step actually is. Speak it, write it, stop hiding it from yourself. Most chosen ones already know what it is. The issue was never identification, the issue was always willingness. So put the feet in the water. Make the call, send the message, start the project, walk into the room, say the yes, say the no. Whatever it is, take it. The river only parts for those who are already moving. The rest comes after. Type "I put my feet in the water" in the comments. Let that be your declaration of faith and your commitment to take the step that changes everything. Chosen one, remember what God said at the start. Something is about to change everything. Now you understand what's changing, why it's happening now, and what to do to receive it completely. The melting point has been reached, the heating wasn't wasted, and the version of you that emerges on the other side is the one this entire process was building all along. So put your feet in the water, take the step, release what needs to be released, and receive what's arriving with gratitude and intention. Close your eyes for 10 seconds and say out loud, "God, I receive the change that is coming. I put my feet in the water. I trust you with what I cannot see, and I step forward into everything that is changing for me now. Amen." Drop a like now. That simple action helps carry this message to another chosen one standing at their own point of change, who needs to know now is the moment to step forward. Subscribe and turn on the bell. The next messages are for chosen ones who took the step, crossed the river, and are ready to walk into everything that changes on the other side. Comment one word that describes what you felt watching this video. Just one word. I read every single one.